Ladies and gentlemen, to complement the financial track, we are joined by a great panel lineup of industry-leading financial and fintech subject matter experts and practitioners. We are honored to be in the presence of Afhzal Abdul Rahman, the Chief Digital Technology Officer of Employees Provident Fund, EPF. Afhzal has 22 years of tech experience in the financial services and oil and gas industry. Our second guest panelist is Dawn Lai, the Chief Executive Officer of Experian Information Services, Malaysia, who has over 20 years of experience navigating the credit information industry. Also joining the panel is Robin Lee, the CEO and co-founder of HelloGold, a Sharia-compliant fintech focused on creating financial products for underserved and unbanked in emerging markets. Next, our special guest is Norhizam Kadir, a Vice President of MDEC, currently oversees new growth areas with key emphasis on fintech and Islamic digital economy. And our panel moderator, CF Fong, who is a Managing Director and Senior Partner of Boston Consulting Group. He leads digital BCG in Southeast Asia and is a core member of the financial institution practice. This is an absolutely interesting mix of panelists from key areas of financial services and also fintech. Okay, without further ado, the panel is getting ready to go, so please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a short while.
Good morning to all of you joining us digitally. This is a great way to demonstrate the power of digital technology where we can still meet digitally during CMCO. Now, for all of us here in the panel, as you can see, we are all together physically. I think this really shows the commitment of the panelists to ensure that we have a live discussion with each other today to share our insight with you. As you saw earlier, my partner shared with you some of the critical elements of how to have successful digital transformation. New way of working, talent, data, technology, and partnership. Now, what we'd like to do is to talk about the how to make sure that we deliver against these elements. And why is how so important? Because from our point of view, the urgency to act is now. Pre-COVID, the investor, when BCG did a research with them, they said the key agenda for any organization, especially financial institution, is to embark on digital transformation. Post-COVID, we did a study and found that financial institution, 80% of the financial institution management team saw that the key agenda is on digital transformation. So it is important that we now talk about how to successfully execute such digital transformation. Now, to do that, we have a good mix of panelists today. We have individuals that are from developmental agencies like MDEC. We have a startup like from HelloGold. We have incumbent financial institutions like EPF. And we also have a service provider from Experian. So let's now start our panelist discussion. Let me invite each of the panelist members to basically start off by describing how does digital and data means to your organization. Maybe we'll start off from your side.
Thank you. What digital and data means to my organization. We are at MDEC. We're a government agency. Digital means economic activities coming from, of course, the public sector, the private sector, of course, the citizens themselves, in terms of how these digital activities can contribute to Malaysia's economy. To do that, we need to have proper measurements, and that's where data management comes in, right? In ensuring that the efforts that we put in would be able to be justifiable in creating impact for the country. As of now, digital economy, ICT consumption and supply contributes to 19.1% of Malaysia's GDP. And that's a great milestone. And it wouldn't have been achieved, this particular milestone, if digital and data management are not being put into priority.
Thank you, Hizam. Robin?
So for HelloGold, we're the fintech startup. The reason why digitalization is important for us is our mandate. Our mandate, our objective is to create financial products for the underserved and the unbanked in the emerging markets. So in this sense, we look at our solution to create accessibility, affordability, and also suitability, right? And digitalization enables us to accelerate accessibility to the last mile, to our customers at the end point. And then what we also need to do is make sure it's affordable. Digitalization of financial products enables us to cut down the ticket sizes so that our customers can afford to invest, start to invest their hard-earned savings. So from that standpoint, digitalization was key to everything that we did. When it comes to data, once we've built the product and we have started to create a customer base, we look at data on a regular basis, practically on a daily basis, to see consumer behavior, to figure out what we need to do to basically create customized products for our customers. So as an example, when we first started, people could just buy and sell gold whenever they wanted. Then when we saw the usual traction of our customers, what we then did was to create a financial product to enable them to save on a monthly basis without having the need to put in more money. And it was automated through a direct debit from the banking system. And that's an example of very simple use of data to deliver to the customers something that they would find useful.
Thank you, Robin. Afhzal, yeah.
All right. So digital and data within the EPF context. EPF, our vision is obviously to be able to ensure that our members have a better future, and that includes having adequate wealth, having health, but also having the right wealth and health to be able to lead a meaningful life. And I think when we look at digital, we want to ensure that we are an institution that not only looks after the social well-being, that we continue to ensure that we have and we embrace digital technologies to be able to continuously provide relevant products and services and advisory to our members in terms of achieving our vision, but fundamentally ensuring that we continue to be engaged, that we continue to be relevant to our member base. And I think if you look at the demographics of our member base today, we've got about 14.8 million members. It cuts across 5 distinct generations, all the way from baby boomers to Gen Ys and Gen Zs. And increasingly, the member base made up of the demographics that are very technical, they're very technology savvy, they demand exceptional customer experience, they demand products and services that are very convenient and very relevant to their needs. And we feel that digital is essentially about the ability for us to be able to not only just implement technology and solutions, but really to be able to embrace technology capabilities that are out there today, to be able to achieve our vision. And I think a central part of that strategy is obviously having the right data in place. I think we are in a position where whatever decision we make when it comes to either providing products or services or coming up with policies for our members, a lot of those decisions require us to have really meaningful data to work on in order for us to be able to formulate the right strategies and policies and intervention in place. So that's our understanding of digital and data.
Got it. Thank you, Afhzal. Dawn?
Yeah. For us, right, Experian, we are a global technology company, and we are also the market leader in terms of data and analytics. If you look at it, not many organizations in the world can claim leading position in both data and analytics. And in Malaysia, we have a data business, the one which I'm actually leading. And we work across with, I think, multiple different agencies, be it from government, be it from private data partners in terms of actually building in terms of data assets. We are also support financial services sector as our customer, be it from the banks, Fintech, even payment company, or even many more other institutions, by actually providing a comprehensive suite of services, be it from data, decisioning solutions. One of the unique things that we are able to do is that not just by providing data, we are embedding the data through a digital way. Most of the data services that we provide to clients is either through a web portal or is in a data format that it can deliver through API. People can consume the information very easily. And with that, that definitely helps them to make a faster and automate the so-called decision. the decision making in terms of how do they want to actually give out lending, how do they want to onboard their customer. Definitely we see across the last couple of years, a lot more, I think, as what CF has mentioned, the journey, the digitalization journey has kick-started, and a lot more such demand has come in. And a lot of organization is looking at how do they onboard customer digitally, how do they authenticate customer on that basis. And I would say from experience standpoint, we do have the data. Data is part of the core of our asset. And that is how we are able to help, and by applying the analytics capabilities that we have, we are able to help people to actually tailor and actually making sure that reach out to the right target group. Yeah, I would say that would summarize in terms of how data and digitals mean to the Experian organization. Yeah.
Speaking of data, it's actually a very good segue. First, I must commend the conference title on how we have positioned digital and data side by side. From my point of view, it's extremely important to me. There's no digital journey without a data journey. And since we are in a financial institution segment, data is extremely important for a financial institution, given that we are, after all, dealing with virtual goods. We're really dealing with ones and zero. Money can be transferred virtually. Now, with that, we have seen companies that really harness the data to do many things that Don spoke about, right? To do credit underwriting. Many of them also do a lot around helping them to invest better, right? Using big amount of big data. Some are even using that to help them to create stronger customer intimacy and also improve their internal operation. So speaking of that, how I would like to invite the panelist members, how they have seen successful organization and their respective organization really harness data to win in this digital world.
Well, I can go.
Yeah, anyone, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think we've won yet. So I think we are in progress as a startup. But we use data, as I mentioned earlier, on a daily basis, and we use data to figure out better ways to serve our customers. And our customers, within the Malaysian context, are people that earn up to about 4,000 to 5,000 ringgit a month. So it's very important that they kind of, in some ways, optimize what they can save, because for a lot of folks, cash, particularly these days, is a scarce resource. So I talked about earlier what we call the Smart Saver program, where basically, because we saw that a number of our customers were buying gold on a regular basis, we want to remove friction from our standpoint and also make it more convenient for them in an affordable way. So for us, what we then did was that we tracked it. We then tested it in a pilot to see if we gave a product that automated the process so they don't have to remember every month to put money in, whether that would work, and we then invest the gold on a daily basis, in our case, at the lowest price of the day. And we struck it at 30 ringgit. And that product has grown at 10% per month over the last 18 months, which is, for us, pretty astounding. But that's just a very simple way of just looking at the data internally. And before I just finish, the flip side to that is that we're living in a world where there's data overload. So you have internal data, which is contained, but for tech startups with no customers trying to bring on board customers, you have external data from Facebook, from Google, etc. And the amount of metrics that you can look at and try to make sense of that is actually very, very challenging. And oftentimes it's a full-time job just to figure out which one is meaningful and which one is meaningless, and how to use it.
I just want to add to what Robin said with regards to providing affordable and accessible solutions, especially to the underserved market. One of the tasks that MDEC undertakes in spearheading digital economy is to push digital and financial inclusion. Usage of non-conventional data. You're targeting Machikia, who may not have credit history, and chances for Machikia to have a micro financing to be approved by financial institutions would probably be very low. And this is where fintech companies come in, and it's very encouraging to see different assets of data, social media usage, e-commerce patterns, phone usage are being used, and data that being delivered by Experian actually in helping to do that validations, that KYC, This is very encouraging because it's targeting those people who were not served before, but now they are able to apply and obtain these financial services digitally because of the availability of different sets of data.
Yeah, and CF, if I may, I just want to take it on a bit further to what Hizam has said. I think where we're at, if you look at the EPF, again, 14.8 million members, and each of them, when we looked at some of the data that we have in the organization, it's quite apparent that a lot of them are actually within what we call as our basic savings ratio. So they don't have adequate savings to cater for their post-retirement, and we find that to be a concern. I think that's where we've initiated this data for good strategy. So this is where we're looking at how can we leverage data, and that's data that's not only limited to what's available within EPF, but also data that could potentially be consumed from our other partners, our other agencies, our other organizations, and really formulate the right policies, the right intervention, the right assistance that we can provide to our members so they can make the right decision. So if a member comes to us and we detect, for example, that the member is probably going to a situation where he or she is over leveraged, in terms of taking credit, additional credit and whatnot. So there's opportunities for us to then provide an independent advisory to the member, a bit of intervention, and be able to then assist the member with making the right decisions. And we think, therefore, it's quite important for us to have the right objective and vision for the data and that we want to leverage on, but ultimately being able to use the data that we have to formulate, again, the right interventions, the right objectives, and so on.
Yeah, actually, I just want to add on to what Norhizam has mentioned in terms of financial inclusions and servicing the underserved or underbanked group, right? For Experian, one of our key visions is also to build this whole alternative data ecosystem. If you look at from Malaysia perspective, right, those that with really former banking history that is under Bank Negara Secret, that is only about, in terms of individual-wise, it's only about 11 million or 12 million active individual who has borrowing. But if you look at the bankable group of populations of Malaysia, it's about 20 million or maybe 18 to 20 million, right? So there are large segment of individuals that there is no banking former history. At this point, when these people go to the banks to apply a loan, as I think many countries, markets that you can see, that apply the same for Malaysia. If you have no credit history, generally the banks cannot lend to you because they do not know what kind of behavior you are. So on that basis, part of the thing I would say that in the last couple of years, Experian has undertaken in terms of build an overall data ecosystem by working across different agencies, from the government agency, from even data partners like people like telco, payment gateway, and even if you talk about utilities, non-banks lender, which is actually not in the former banking history, that helps to connect in terms of the data. And we are regulated entities. We are given a license to operate as a credit reporting agency. So we are in the best place in terms of collecting the information and supporting financial services provider, not just the bank, or be it for the fintech or those non-bank lender, in terms of giving them a 360 view of their customer, because that itself definitely would actually helps individual or small businesses to gain access to credit.
Okay, thank you, panelist member. There's this saying that data is the new oil. But I like to think, I also hear other people say that data is actually a new air, right? In a sense, because oil is finite, data is not finite, it's ever increasing. And also based on what you say, yes, sometimes the air can be a bit polluted, we need to clean that up, but air can be combined. But ultimately, if you do that well, air, like data, can really bring new life, right, to underserved markets. So I think that's great to see all the data initiative that are pushing. Now let's switch gear to talk about technology, right? Clearly you can't talk digital without thinking technology, and when I say technology, it's really IT, right, the information technology. And that, as you know, is a evolving space as well, right? There's a lot of new technology evolution, microservices, containerization, cloud, of course, right? And yes, one does need to keep up with the technology to make sure that your technology continuously remain nimble to be able to capture the digital opportunity. So coming from your perspective, both your organization and what you have seen, how do you think the whole technology should be looked at, right? What are some of the winning components of the technology stack that one must have?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not a tech guy, but I think one of the biggest challenges of figuring out what your technology strategy is that there's overwhelming choice between existing platforms, services, and emerging platforms and services. And it's truly overwhelming. And I'd say even before, there is no best in class. I think the best in class is a function of what it is that you want to do and what is strategically important for you. So from the HelloGold perspective, when we first started, we were a startup. We started with zero. Our objective in the first 12 months was to get off the ground as quickly as possible. So we chose a technology stack for that, you know, and we really didn't care about much else, and we built for that with, I guess, on the back of our mind that at some point in time, in the next 2 or 3 years, we will have to rebuild. So I think for a lot of organizations, depending on how sophisticated you are, whether you have the benefit of a chief digital transformation officer, you know, you either have to think about all these things and really figure this thing out, or you're going to have to experiment. But there is no right one answer. I think that it's a function of the size, you know, whether you have certainty in direction or whether you need to test and you may have to change. And that's the great and dangerous thing about it. You know, you can't really go wrong, but you can also badly go wrong.
Right. Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's really about technology that gives you that agility and flexibility to run at the pace of business, right? So that's one angle. The other angle is probably perhaps around along a strategic direction, whether ecosystems is an important aspect or not. But in any of those two cases, I think the key technologies would be obviously your front ends, your customer experience platforms, where your sensors to the world, to your customers, right? Where you try to get insights around what their needs and their wants are, whether they're happy with your your channels and what have you. Customer experience platforms, technology today that allows you to be very nimble again, because where we are at in the digital world today, we need speed is of essence. So we need the ability to be able to respond quickly to the business. In EPF's case, we work with the government with a lot of initiatives that we support for the government. So there's a need for us to quickly be able to respond to those kind of initiatives. I think the third area would be technologies that allow you to collaborate with your partners in your ecosystem, APIs, middleware, what have you. Yeah.
If I can echo to that, I'm glad that Afhzal mentioned about customers' experience. And most app or web developers, they tend to overlook. They are too fancy with all these graphics interfaces, but they forgot that the whole entire journey of a web and an app is to make it easier. That user experience, UX, is extremely crucial. Since we are talking so much about financial inclusions, right? I mean, the app itself has to be inclusive. Exactly how do you align it with your intended audiences? I mean, you can't be selling something to an audience in tier 3, tier 4 markets speaking the language of T20, for example, right? So bearing in mind that level of inclusivity and ensuring that understanding the demographics of your intended customers are crucial in delivering that customer's experience.
Yeah, I'm not a very technology person, but what I can see from the Experian perspective in terms of driving data and analytics, technology definitely play a big part. In terms of how fast are you able to come out the so-called right informations, or maybe the right kind of messagings or profiling to actually assist our customer in terms of actually the right targeting strategy or customer level kind of strategy. So I think nowadays that a lot move into this sort of crowd environment, and definitely it is with this sort of big data assets, all this scalability, agility, like what Afhzal has mentioned, is very important, and that is fundamentally has to be put in place in order for us. I think any organizations, if they want us to drive better efficiency or better customer experience, that would be some of the key. Yep.
if I just may, I think from if you're a startup and you're in the financial services space, I think the two things you need to think about is data security, because you don't want to be hacked, and customer data, and even worse, customer assets flowing out the door. So for us, when we first started, we made a very conscious, we would put it on the cloud, apart from anything else, in terms of cost savings and efficiencies. We could then leverage off the cloud provider's own security protocols rather than a startup security protocol. Then in terms of microservices, which is the way that we built the platform, because we're essentially like an asset manager, so we don't have thousands of transactions per second, it's thousands of transactions per day. We could afford to have lower latency, so we could afford to build microservices. But like I said, I think ultimately, organizations need to figure out what it is that they want to do, what it is they want to build, how important is the customer experience versus just, improving internal efficiencies. And that really then drives what type of technology stack you want to build out.
Absolutely, I think well said. One common thread that I listened from all your answer is, I would like to coin it fit for purpose, right? If your purpose is about customer centricity, let's drive something to that. It could be cybersecurity as well, right? It's really about fit for purpose. And I just remembered one of the clients that I consulted. We were debating like how best to interact with the customer, right? Is it to use sophisticated CRM tools? How do we interact with them? Finally, we landed on WhatsApp, because if it's about some information that you need to broadcast and keep up the engagement, WhatsApp can do a very good job at it, right? So, and there are a lot of technology out there. One does need to know what is it for, and then find what are the best fit technology on. And Robin, you also highlighted an important point. Technology is quite sophisticated. I mean, there are many ways to deal with it. But I would say that's not the hardest part. From our point of view, the hardest part is actually the digital talent, the humans in that whole equation, right? And as you know, these days, the digital talent, we are talking about the new talents like data scientists, like the UI, UX designer, like the solution engineers, right? So, and many of our clients actually told us that it's actually very difficult to A, train all this talent in-house, B, to attract the talent, C, to retain them, right? So it seems like there's a no end of really trying to get all this talent, right? And clearly organizations that have done that well will win because the technology is static, the talent itself is dynamic and can continuously learn and evolve. From your own experience and what you've seen, how do we deal with this whole digital talent challenge?
From a startup's perspective, again, I think the digital talent thing is, in one sense, a challenge, but also not a challenge. And I think 2020 has proven that. I think it really depends on the ethos of the organization, the mindset of the organization. I mean, HelloGold, we started off life as a digital organization, so we don't have legacy constraints. So for us, at a very simple level, whether you sit at a desk on the floor below, whether you sit at a desk across oceans, actually doesn't really matter to us. So, at one level, we don't need to hire from Malaysia. Of course, it would make more sense, it's more convenient to do so, but we can hire at a global level. And COVID, has, in many ways, has proven that. So from actually, the acquisition of talent is not a challenge, because you now have a global platform in which you can do that. Now, in terms of creating brand awareness, that's much more challenging, right? As a startup, you need to use social media, you need to use internal networks to try and find these folks. You don't have the brand equity of Experian or EPF or MDEC or Google to do that. But that builds up over time within your own ecosystem, and people get to know you. Then in terms of retention, we've had people that have stayed with us since the beginning because they're happy with the way that we work, particularly now that we still continue to work from home and it's all digital. But there are also people that hang around and then want to move on because they can't get what they need from the organization. And that's fine too. I think that what organizations need to do is to have a people strategy that reflects the reality of life, not expecting people to stay for 5, 10 years, but that, you know, there needs to be a constant recruitment of new talent. I know organizations that constantly go to universities to bring in interns, and then from the interns, you know, they recruit, so they're constantly replenishing the talent pool.
Yeah, so you know, we face this challenge as well at EPF. I think it's definitely a challenge to be able to you know, retain, attract, recruit talent in this space. And I think you almost have to take a multi-pronged approach. So of course, internal staff, recruitment, traditional recruitment, that goes without saying. You know, we've got this Future Fit program where we look at essentially 3 key stakeholder groups within EPF. The masses, where we need to ensure that they've achieved a certain level of digital literacy. We then have the guys who are a bit more focused, you know, beyond the foundation elements. And if we've got another group that are really the specialized ones, which potentially looks at, you know, potentially being certified, going to more advanced topics and what have you. But I think that's internally. I think when it comes to being able to fuel and support your transformation or your digitalization efforts, I think you've got to go beyond that. I think we need to start looking at potentially having strategic partnerships in place, and whether that includes working with accelerators to perhaps accelerate the process of bringing up the level of digital competencies or capabilities within the organization, working with tech enablers, working with research partners. But essentially, I think it's going to be a combination of, yes, focusing on upskilling and developing and retaining and attracting talent, you know, internally, but also looking at working with partners so that they can support some of your digital talent needs.
I just want to paint the current reality. Actually, unemployment is rising. A lot of people being laid off because of the current pandemic situation. I think it calls for people who have lost their jobs to start looking into reskilling. And it's crucial, actually, and as a lot of jobs are moving towards data and digital, everyone needs to have the skills, the digital skills, to be equipped in order for them to be retained and to be recruited, re-recruited, and then to be retained in that organization. I just want to introduce a platform that MDEC has put together. This is a digital skills training directory that has solutions. We work with partners, we work with training providers. You know, content that can help you in terms of reskilling your programming skills, your data analytics skills, program management, design thinking, security, you name it. There are about hundreds of courses that are available on this training directory. And we partner up with Penjana, right? There's an initiative, Penjana Hiring Initiative, where companies would then be able to rehire these talents that have reskilled themselves with digital skills. A training subsidy of 4,000 ringgit are being made available through SOCSO to help these people who have been unemployed to get into the workforce again, getting subsidy from SOCSO and Penjana, and hopefully the unemployment can get better.
Yeah, I think that I just want to add on to what Norhizam said. Right, I explored with the MDEC in terms of the this SOUT program. I think there is this STAR program used to be, right, in terms of from people from, I think, graduate from university. Then how do we actually get them in on a contract or project basis? And from there, how do we actually eventually, if we find that is the right group of people, we can also actually employ them directly. For Experian, right, from the Experian perspective, definitely as organizations, we adopt a people-first approach. That is actually fundamentally, people is at the core of the business of ours. And we drive a lot of innovations actually throughout different parts of the world. And there are, I think, total about 4 data labs that actually is being set up across different country, and there is one set up in Singapore, which is actually serving the region. And one of the things that, from organization standpoint, to do is that driving this so-called innovations or innovative kind of environment to give the challenge or give the opportunity for people to come together to solve a certain problem. So for that basis, helping client, working together with clients to solve a particular problem or creating a new way of solutions through all these data scientists or new way of AI machine learning. So that is definitely one of the things that we are driving at. And over in Malaysia, we also have about, I think, 800 staff in Cyberjaya. That is our global delivery center, driving in terms of analytics development, serving the whole APAC region. So that itself, we are also working with a university in terms of maybe hiring interns, in terms of coming out a structured training program to make sure that these are the talents that we can actually groom them, and continuously, if we find the right one, and we will actually continue to retain the talents within the organization.
Thank you, panelist member. I really like how all of you talk about growing talent as well. And that's absolutely right. Because if you think about digital is an overlay, if you may, right? If you do digital marketing, you need to know about marketing skills, right? If you do digital procurement, you need to know about procurement. So it's about having the intrinsic skills that you have, marketing, procurement, and then overlay that with digital. And that requires training, because you can't get someone that knows both from the start, right? And a lot of it got to do with how you design to the digital to help those individuals. I mean, if you think about say the Grab drivers now, I mean, many of them can just use an app very easily to conduct a business, right? And that actually ties back to where the way BCG sees it, when we have this team called Bionic, where you combine the technology and human, right? If you design that well, that can actually help to solve the digital talent problem. On that note, when we think about talent, what follows quite closely is actually culture. Because it's not enough just have a pool of people that knows about digital, that are enabled by digital. You need to win. You need to almost think like a startup, right? To really act in a more agile pace. Because the world is getting more and more complex. Things are moving faster and faster. The real sustained winning strategy is to be able to adapt in an agile fashion, right? And we have worked with our clients to create the Agile at Scale concept, which is learning from the tech startup, like Spotify, to apply Agile in the tech environment. How do you scale it up and apply it to the rest of the organization? So for example, ING Bank in Netherlands, they have done it successfully. The whole organization, the whole bank is self-run like an Agile fashion, where individual from marketing, from product, from analytics, from IT, they all sit together to deliver towards a customer outcome, right, as opposed to their own functional area. Coming back to your organization and what we have seen, how do you see this whole concept of digital culture, or the other words, agile, working in your environment?
Well, I think we recognize the need to be more nimble, to be more agile in our organization. We have initiated a number of agile pilots, I would say, where we assemble ourselves in terms of this cross-functional team, business and IT together, working on a common goal, working, within the framework of Scrum and doing sprints and what have you. So that's in place. We hope that, with the small successes that we're getting in between, that we would be able to then eventually scale up to the enterprise and be able to adopt Agile at Scale. So that's certainly the direction that we're headed to. We're also looking from an organization perspective around restructuring some of our customer divisions. In the past, we've been organized according to functional domains, registration, contribution, withdrawal, and what have you. So we're also looking at aligning those divisions to more product and customer segments. So we get a bit more clarity around the focus areas, which is obviously the customers or our members. So those are some small things that we're doing. I think obviously it's not just about adopting Agile. I think it is about us being able to shape the entire organization, adopting this digital or Agile mindset, being able to be courageous, being able to experiment with ideas. But then when it doesn't happen, when that's not successful, then we pull the plug, or we dare to stop the initiatives. So really trying to go along the approach where let's not spend millions of money, 8 to 12 months of implementation effort to roll out a system, but taking smaller incremental approaches, but ensuring that whatever we do, at the end of the day, meets the business objectives, but it's what the customer needs and wants.
Thank you, Afhzal.
I don't want to talk about agility in government. I think I think that would warrant a separate discussion. It's just an observation made. You mentioned about organizations turning into startups. These notions about startups, and I think Robin will be able to tell better, of being agile. All right, I think a lot of there's some similarities between agility and speed. Speed would help you to get things faster. It's really quick wins, actually. Nimble in certain sense, but it's very short term. I think agility is more than that. It's about being more nimble, as well as being able to move accurately. I guess that's where data comes in. And organizations that are agile would then be able to look at it not just only from quick win standpoint, being able to pivot and being able to sustain and scale for the long-term impact. So these notions about organizations, have we heard about banks wanting to be startups, and they do a lot of PR, mentioning about, we have to be as agile as startups. I do not know much about that, and I don't think that I am in agreement with that notion, because startups who are not agile will eventually die as well, right? I think even startups like any other organizations would have to be nimble, would have to be agile in order for them to continue sustain and scale.
I guess I have a very controversial perspective on this. I'm not convinced, and empirically, there are so many studies about the longevity of a company. All companies start as a startup at some point in their lives, and at some point they ossify. They lose the ability to innovate. I mean, there's countless examples, and best one being probably Nokia in recent times, right? So I think there's a huge challenge, even more so in a regulated industry like financial services. And it's not just Malaysia, it's everywhere. I mean, I can give you countless, and everyone will know countless examples of just incredibly bad customer experience that is digitized. I'll give you just one. I was signing agreements with a bank, I won't name the bank, and it was digital, but the bank officer made me sign 5 times. I said, it's a digital signature, you can just beam it to all 5 documents. I said, no, and she came with a really clever answer. She said, we need to make sure that you know what you're signing, which is absolutely correct, except for the fact that the monitor was facing her and not me, so I still didn't know what I was signing. But my point is this, is that the mindset and the culture of the organization is such that I think it's very, very difficult to change processes systemically. You can improve the efficiencies of a 10-step process to the 10 most efficient 10 steps, but to change the 10 steps to just 3 steps, I think, well, involves change, which people typically don't want. It probably will put at risk jobs, which obviously people don't like. And it requires a different way of doing things, which has to cascade from the CEO and the board and shareholders all the way down. And I think that is incredibly challenging. I think there's potentially a faster, more secure way of doing it, which is to strategically decide which part of the organization can be digitized and which part can't. To kind of let the part that's going to be digitized slowly die, but at the same time build an SPV, a different vehicle that's housed differently, staffed by different people to grow that, and so that you don't get contaminated. Let them set their own rules and policies and processes and let them go away. And to your point, if they fail, they'll fail fast, like a startup. I think a big challenge for a lot of organizations is that failure is not an option. And I think, and not organizations can do this. I'm not suggesting EPF does this because my money's with EPF, but other financial institutions can do that. And I think just trying to do it within the whole organization on its own, I think is oftentimes 9 out of 10 times doomed to fail.
Yeah, sorry if I can just, I totally agree. I think, even as we're piloting all of this and learning how to, carry this on and whatnot, I think that's a question that we face every day. Is like, is this something that should be applied to the entire organization, right? Is this the magical rule or framework that will give us the successes of startups or whatnot? And that's a constant struggle. You're right. I think at the end of the day, it is about, having the areas that fit agile or that mode of the startup approach. Yes, we'll have that, but I think there's also a part of the organization that may not undergo that process.
Yeah, I kind of agree because this agile approach, right? If you apply across the whole organizations, it depending on which functions and which area are you looking at, right? So operational aspect, or if you look at certain area, this may not work as much as some other area. If you talk about product, you talk about application development. So by applying agility, I think it works in a certain functional area, but to cascade out through the whole organization, that always is a challenge, right? Because it's how do you drive it? And if you spend too much energy and focus on that, does it really get in terms of the result that you want? I have seen, to be fair, that I have seen a bank who wanted to apply this agile approach, but they apply it in a certain area, which they want to make sure that helps that so-called particular functions or business units to actually come up with some of the innovative idea. I think that would work. So from a rollout perspective, from a small functional area, and eventually, unless that you really see there is a benefit to implement so-called organization-wide, then that is something then can take into consideration. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's quite clear. I think clearly when we talk about agile, it's not about one blueprint and everyone needs to do the same way, right? I think what the common theme here is let's just pick it where it makes sense, right? Changing the mindset, making it faster, having sort of a redesign of processes in there. I think it's about more picking up the theme of agile than to just sort of use the buzzword of agile, right? Now let's come to the last element, which is around ecosystem and partnership. So in this digital world, there's this phrase that we hear a lot. It's called co-opetition. On one hand, you are cooperating. On the other hand, you are competing, right? And you do need partners to really augment your capability, whether it's a customer ecosystem, whether distribution, right? And companies that have built partnership well, they actually cement themselves in a good position within the ecosystem. So how have your organization really leveraged partnership to win in this digital world?
Yes, that's what we do. Yeah, no, look, I mean, partnerships is a key part of our strategy, right? We work with big players like Boost, Touch and Go Digital, Grab, and we constantly have a BD pipeline of big partners that want to build financial services platform. I think the kind of trend started way back when mobile operators wanted to build everything in-house, and they suddenly realized that they weren't great content creators. They just want to create the ecosystem and maintain the ecosystem. So I think collaboration between startups with startups and incumbents is here to stay, and is absolutely key. So that everyone can get best of breed.
I think it's even more apparent in MDEC. You need to be sleeping with the enemies in the context where, in a way, I mean, we're driving contributions of digital economy to the country, then we're competing with other countries, right? But you can't dismiss the fact that these other countries, the ecosystem that you're building, are also contributing. So competition, I like to use this analogy of MDEC being a dance floor. And when you have the right ambience, the right music, the right ecosystems, right? People will come in, and eventually your enemies, your competitions will come in and dance with you as well.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong of extending the dance floor to be as large as possible, because eventually competition, as what you said, will then create mutual benefits to both parties, or multiple parties for that matter.
I think it's almost a given in this day and age that you've got to be able to collaborate and partner. I think if you look at EPF, on one hand, we are constrained with what we can provide given our resources, capabilities, capacity, what have you. But on the other hand, we do have this long-term vision around enhancing, expanding, supplementing our portfolio of products and services, the advisory that we provide. And the reality is a lot of that can't be provided internally within EPF. We've got to partner, whether it's partnering with people who have, who provide maybe investment opportunities, partnering with other players to provide data, partnering players who can expand our contribution or collection channels, working with the e-wallets. So I think definitely that's, partnership is a core element of our strategy moving forward.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, maybe just a few keywords, right? I think Experian definitely a strong supporter in terms of partnership. And as that, what you can see in terms of, we have struck out quite a lot of strategic partnership and venture across Southeast Asia. And just back in Malaysia, we have partnerships with Ringgit Plus in terms of the digital channel for financial product, and how do we enable them in terms of with the data as well as decisioning solutions to hit out to the right target consumer group. We are also working with telco as well as a lot of other data partners in terms of forming the overall data ecosystem. To us, data is also key, especially when it comes to the data part. Yep.
Thank you. So speaking of partnership, I think we partner quite well on this panel. So Hizam, Robin, Afhzal, Don, thank you very much for sharing your very practical insight on how to win in this digital world. For the audience out there, I hope you capture some of these good nuggets that you can bring back and apply it in your organization. We started off this session by saying that there is a strong, fierce urgency to act now, right? And with this practical advice, many of these things you can already start implementing. So thank you for spending time with us. We wish you all the best in your digital and data transformation journey. Thank you.